Let me tell you a story about how I sold 15 paintings in 4 minutes. Come on along. Hi everybody, welcome back. I am so excited to tell you about this. I was in the Square Foot show last night. It was the Julia and Friends Square Foot show where I curated in all of the artists, and we had a launch at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time last night. If you're watching this, that was November 13th, 2025. It's an annual show that I curate for Square Foot Show, which is a company that I started. And I sold 15 pieces in the first 4 minutes. And in the first 3 hours, we sold 120 paintings for artists across Canada and the US. And we are so excited about it. Now, there's no flip the switch, there's no secret, but I'm gonna tell you how I did it, okay? Years ago, I was an artist starting out, painting on my dining room table, building my portfolio, building my style, getting it down, and I did all the shows. So this is actually a story of a journey of how I got to the point where I can sell 15 paintings in 4 minutes. So stick with me, there might be some tips here for you. All through grade school, we're gonna go way back. All through grade school and high school, I was one of those kids that always got identified that, did you know she could draw? Did you know that she can paint? Did you know that she's quite talented at art? I always knew that going to college or going on for an art degree was where I wanted to be. So I went to Sheridan College right after school, after high school. I got married, and then I had 5 kids, and I did a lot of painting from my dining room table after they were asleep. And I did a lot at that time, a lot of painting only when I was hired to do it, because I didn't have a lot of time to just have a practice. So let's skip forward many, many years. I've raised my kids. I've continued to paint and continued to do it for fun sometimes and for profit. I did a lot of portraiture. I was purely figurative for a long time. We lived all over. We lived in Virginia Beach. We lived in New York. We lived in Tanzania. We lived in Kenya. And then we came back to Canada when my youngest 2 were in high school, and I had more time to build a career. And I always had that entrepreneurial type spirit. I'm not a very good employee. I like my time to be my own. I can get a lot done, but I get a lot done for myself. So my husband actually said, you need to get a job. For a while, I did have a job. For a couple of years, I ran a festival in my city of Hamilton. I ran a festival, and I learned a lot, and I met a lot of people. And that was a really good thing. Part of the festival that I ran, there was an art show component. So I met a lot of artists because I had just got back from Africa, and I met a lot of artists in Hamilton. So building your network, there's the first tip, build your network. That's a really good thing. Even if it's just a creative network, even if it's something that just feeds you, build that network, okay? So then I started doing the shows. I slogged around. I had a tent, I bought a tent, I had grids, and I painted, and I figured it out, and I did show after show after show in the heat, in the wind, in the rain, and I figured out what people liked. I started, an interesting story is I started my 12 by 12, my little paintings that I now sell retail for $600. They started out at $50. So I did my first show, or the first shows with them at $50, and they would sell pretty fast because people kind of liked my style. I was already developing a recognizable style. There's the second tip. Actually, there's probably more tips, but the ones I want to highlight: get a style. Figure it out. Figure out what is your thumbprint that makes you unique from somebody else. And people started buying them. They'd buy them at $50. So then I'm like, okay, $50. I had 10 of them. I sold all of them. I'm going to double the price. So I doubled it to $100. Sold out again. So at these ongoing shows in the summer where I would go, and then I put them up to $150, $200, around $200 at the time, about 10 years ago. That was the sweet spot. That's where I could paint them and I could sell them readily and not exhaust myself by having to paint, to sell 10 at 200 means I made $2,000. If they were still at 50, that's a lot of paintings, right? That's a lot of paintings that I had to do. So figuring out my pricing also. And as I grew in popularity and people liked my things, they started coming to me. And let's just synopsisize, about a 15-year period. So I worked from my home. I developed all sorts of things. There was a shabby chic era where I painted furniture. That was pretty popular. Even stores kind of picked it up. Local stores would pick up some of the things that I did and I'd resell there. And I was starting to get a name, that she's pretty artsy, she's pretty creative. And that is how I brought in an income. It wasn't a huge income, but it was an income that could keep me home, that I didn't have to go to work, and that I didn't have to leave my kids. So spring forward to the job that I did for the festival, I met a lot of people. And even during that time, I was doing local shows. So my third tip, as you're building your career, is spend some time going to local and maybe, within 50 kilometers or miles of your home, to shows that you might fit in. Shows that sell about the same price point that you're at. The artwork is, you don't want it to be similar. Of course, you want to stand out, but you want to be able to fit in. Like if I'm an impressionist landscape painter, I'm not going to go to a high realism animal, show. You pick and choose, but go to the shows, figure out what fits for you, and make your aspirations and your goal. And then you've got to apply. There's lots of applications, all of that. That is not what this video today is about. It's about my journey. Those little details, we could do videos on those as time goes by, how to apply to shows and things like that. But what I want to get you is just how I got to the point where selling 15 paintings in 4 minutes happened. So I did a whole bunch of shows. I was working at the festival, and then I did a show that kind of launched me. It was in a little town called Guelph. It was a one-day show, and I sold $6,000 worth of work. And at the time, that was just huge for me. And selling that kind of money and making that kind of money was more than I was making part-time running a festival for the whole month. And I knew I could do it again. And I knew that people were starting to look. So I called my husband and I said, you will not believe what I just sold. I'm on my way home. Get the wine out. But I want to quit my job. And he was at that point, I had done a lot of things. I had done a lot of experiments, and he trusted me. He trusted me that I knew what I was doing. By that time, I had taken a studio space. So I had moved off from my dining room table into a studio space. And that's a story all on its own. I was invited by someone who was renovating a building. They were putting studios in it. They had a vision, and it was down in the artsy center of my city, Hamilton. That street had already started doing something called an art crawl, and it was gaining in popularity. People were going on the second Friday of every month, and it was a fun thing that they were starting to do. And this group of people had bought a building and they were renovating it, and they wanted artists to fill it up. So they invited me to come. There's another tip. I don't know if I'm on third or fourth. We won't number them. There's another tip. Take opportunity when it shows up. If someone asks you to do something or bring something forward, or you see it, jump in. Jump in. Don't be scared. even if it costs you a fee, try it out. Figure out how much you have to sell to pay the fee, that type of thing. So this gentleman actually asked me to come. I could set up in the building for a couple of art crawls before they were open and see if I liked it. And I went to each of these art crawls, and I sold enough to pay the rent that they were proposing for me for a small studio. And I think at the time it was $565 a month. So I knew that I could, on an art crawl, make that money. So that seemed like a wise thing to do. It was the wisest thing that I did. So I took that studio and I went there, and it became my job. I went there 4 to 5 days a week. My kids would realize, I'm gone. I can't bring you lunch. I can't bring you your papers you forgot. I can't do any of that. And I worked from that studio. And the art crawl was one of the most successful things. People would come up into the building. I was discovered by galleries. I was discovered by clients. And then one of the big things, and this is one of the big tips, is I started having all my work professionally photoed and documented. And that was huge because the galleries would start, some galleries who hadn't carried me but been watching me would call and say, we love your new style, or the new way your work is going. And I'm like, well, it is always evolving, of course, but it's just good photographs. And nowadays with iPhones and things like that, don't worry. I think getting good photographs for Instagram and your website is okay, but you need to document for your legacy and for reproduction. A whole nother story. So I had taken this studio, and then one of the partners asked my husband if he would like, and myself, if we would like to buy another building on the street. And we said yes. My husband's a contractor, and I was making enough money, and we figured out how to put the down payment together. That was a risk too, because we used a line of credit on our house, and we put a down payment together, and we bought and renovated a building where I spent 10 years with a studio on the main street, and we had tenants above, so it was a great system. And I spent 10 years painting there, and my visibility, that's what I'm looking for. My visibility went up because I was there for every art crawl. The street was very, very interesting. So people would, as they were wandering the street, they would find me. And I worked, and I spent 6 to 8 hours a day working. And of course, when you're working that much, you're building your style, you're honing it, you're figuring out what your grocery money paintings are. That's another tip. Figure out what you sell well and do it so that you can pay your dentist, and you can pay your food, and you can pay your rent, all of those things. So while I was in that studio, I did something called a square foot show. And it is not unique to me. The square foot show is not unique to me. I was in many. I was in one in Toronto where I would submit work. I was in one with a gallery that carried my work, and hers was always very popular. People would line up, and I was amazed at that. I was like, people line up for your show? And what the concept is that you have all the same sized paintings. So let's see, this is a 12 by 12. So this is one that sold in the show that I was just in. The concept is that it is a sale. So at the time, I was selling these for $250. I had gotten these to $250, and that's where they were selling well. So I decided to have my own 12 by 12 show in my studio, and I did 40 paintings. I worked really hard, and I put 40 paintings on the wall, and I advertised them for $200. And at 7 o'clock, I had the doors locked. I followed the way the other shows had done it, like you hang the show, you advertise the show. I used a lot of social media. I used Instagram like crazy, Facebook like crazy. They were free. And I advertised the show at the art crawl the week before, something like that. And at 7 o'clock, I was going to open the doors and let all those people in. Well, at 7 o'clock, nobody was at the door. So I was a little bit, oh no, nobody's at the door. Nobody's coming. Well, by 8 o'clock, I was sold out. They came and they bought them. And I was really, really thrilled. And I could not keep that up though. I couldn't continue to paint 40. 40 was a lot. I took a lot away from my regular. So like this is a larger painting that I'm doing now. Painting all of these took a lot of time away from painting larger paintings, especially when they're on sale. So I curated in friends that were local and friends that I had started to meet on Instagram as I was building my Instagram. And I had done another thing during that time. I had built a website. I had gotten good photography. I had used social media. And finally, I had a point where I need to know what to do. What's the next opportunity? So I actually hired a marketing firm. My nephew ran a marketing firm and he redid my website. I integrated prints into it. I found, there's a whole nother story, but I found a printer, a shipper, and then we integrated e-commerce onto my site. So that was all in there while I was building. And I had about 7 square foot shows in my studio, and they grew in popularity because I had fabulous artists that I'd curate in, and the lineups did start to happen. So we'd have about 75 people lined up every December. We would have this show and people would come in and they'd grab it right off the walls. Maybe I can put some photos here about that. So I was going along with a very popular concept. The square foot show for me was working. Other galleries had square foot shows or little shows or things like that, but it was working really, really well. But it was always in person. And I had gotten at that point to about 10,000 followers on Instagram. And I used Instagram to its max, posting all the time. And so I would do my walls and I would show the work all on the walls at the gallery. And people would be writing me and they would say, so how do we do this? How can I buy at the show? Is it only in person? And I'd be like, yes, it is only in person. So I had not launched any kind of show online before. So I would take a picture. This is funny. I would take a picture after the opening night. I would consolidate the walls. So I would get down to, what was left, because the show was usually 3 days long. And I would take a picture of the consolidated wall and I would put it out and people would screenshot it, circle what they wanted, e-transfer me money, and then I would mail it off to them. So it was very rudimentary, very primitive. Then COVID happened. So we had been developing e-commerce on my site. I've been working with my marketing people, and they had helped me with all my graphics and things like that. So the show was looking professional, and that's another tip. You got to look professional. Show real life, show the mess. People love that. But when you present something, do it really, really well. And COVID hit. And we all know about COVID. And I remember standing at my kitchen table with a coffee when I got the first email that a gallery was closing. And then another gallery was closing and another gallery was closing. And I thought, how in the world am I going to make any money if all my galleries, nobody can see them? This is where we had to pivot. And there's another tip. Pivot. When something is thrown at you, pivot. Don't do the same thing that everybody else is doing. Figure out what the next step is and hop on it. Otherwise, you're going to be too late. So hopping on it for me meant we were going to take my square foot show online. So we brainstormed. And I said, okay, well, if the artists don't have to send me the work, I need good photos of the art, and we're going to build it that way. So the artists kept their work at their house, and we took good photos of the work and we put it up. And I had about 200 pieces, and they were all at that time $250. We had raised the price because everybody that was in it, their prices were starting to get to be $300 and $400 for their 12 by 12s. And that was the same for me. And it went crazy. When it launched, my marketing team had said, well, how many people do you think are going to shop? And I said, maybe 75 are usually lined up, but now, okay, we're doubling the opportunity, maybe 150, 100, 200. So it's like, if 200 people shop and they all buy one painting, we're going to sell out. It's going to be great. Well, 2,000 people hit the site. And I'm going to say that was because of the networking that I had done with these artists, because they had all taken advantage of Instagram and stuff too. And they had built and advertised for the show. So that was brilliant. I had maybe 40 artists, let's say 40 artists all advertising for the show. And that was wonderful. I was advertising for the show. I had put a little bit of a budget towards advertising, and that's another one. At the time, as I was growing, I used to boost posts. $5. I used to boost a post for $5, and that is how I increased my view and my following. So I had a decent amount of following at that time, and they all wanted to go to the show. So they crashed us. They crashed me 2 or 3 times, and I had to go live. I had to say, this is incredible. What is happening? You guys are honoring. This is just, I feel so honored. It's wonderful. Well, I went to bed that night realizing that I think we had virtually sold out. So let's say we sold 200 paintings that night. Amazing. I checked the bank account, and lying in bed, I realized we had sold way too many. We had sold about 30 more. Like, there's more money in there than we had paintings. And the next day, I had to phone my team, and they had to go in the back end and look, and yes, we had sold 30 extra paintings. Well, we had to call the clients, we had to call the artists, but people were actually so excited about this, and that the support for artists was so great. The artists all were willing to paint a new painting for the multiples that had been sold, and the customers were all willing to see what the artists that they loved had, and either repaint or show them something else. So that worked out really, really well. And then we launched Square Foot Show, which is what you see now, squarefootshow.com. We bought Square Foot Show website, we bought Facebook, Instagram, and we decided to do this again. So we launched, and the next year, I believe we may have done 2 shows. This is getting fuzzy. We may have done 2 shows the first year, 4 shows the next year, 6 shows the year after that. And now we're doing 12 shows a year. So we're doing 1 a month, where we have applications. You can go and you can apply. There's themes, so you can apply to the ones that you want. We have a jury. So we have thousands, just so you know, we have thousands of applications at this point. We have a jury, and then we send out acceptance letters. So at this point, the paintings are all $350 Canadian, 300 US, and we curate in brand new artists. And what I have found over the 4 years, we started with a group of artists that were pretty common, and they were in lots of the shows. And those artists have graduated to galleries and to bigger and better things, and are not in my show as often. And now we have new applicants who are coming up into the art world, and Square Foot Show is a great platform for them to be launched. And we have found, and I know because galleries have told me, that they're watching the Square Foot Show to see who sells out and to see who they're gravitating to and who they love. So people who submit to Square Foot Show are submitting great works. It's a great opportunity for people to collect and to show. So how we got to the point where I can sell in 4 minutes 15 paintings is that I built a company. but I didn't build it from nothing. I started on my kitchen table. I took opportunity. I did some advertising. I painted and I honed my skills and I built something. I got involved with things. I learned. I said, well, how can I implement that? I also recognized when I needed help, when I needed to hire that marketing firm. And then that marketing firm recognized something in me, and now we partner together for Square Foot Show. So I have a team of 4 people who kind of grew the business with me, and then we launched it. I implement that, and I grew something that is now, I feel so honored to be part of so many artists. I've met so many artists. And from Square Foot Show, we launched Crown and Press, which is a gallery I have here in Hamilton. And I invited the artists from the sellouts of Square Foot Show. It made sense. I said, who do people like? And Crown and Press is full of artists that have been very successful at my Square Foot Show. So back to last night, this is how we roundabout. I hope you've got a whole bunch. This has just been a rambling, but I hope you've gotten a lot of tips in there. And please, if anything spurs a question, put it in the comments. It'll springboard more videos that I can just answer. So last night, the show went live at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And I had 15 pieces. And I checked in at 8:04 to see how it was going. And we had already sold 45 pieces. 15 of them are mine. And within 3 hours, by the time I went to bed, we had sold almost 120. But this morning I woke up and we had sold 120 paintings. So the show goes till 8 o'clock tonight. I am going to just put this up for today so that you can see it. So if you're seeing this video, you can still go in and see there's about 40 paintings left, and they are all great because these are artists that I created in. For this show, nobody applies. For this show, I've invited them in. So these are some of the best of the best. I'm just so honored to have sold 120 paintings I woke up at 8. So let's say 12 hours, that's 10 paintings an hour. That's pretty great. And it keeps going. So we've got, shall I end there? That's how I sold 15 paintings in 4 minutes. And our next show is in December. It is a neurodivergent show. So we're supporting artists that are either neurodivergent or support someone who is. And in January, we're doing a student show, and applications for that are open just for another week or so. This is November 14th today, 2025. If you're watching this later, this still applies. You can still go to squarefootshow.com and apply for shows because we're going to continue to grow it. And we have a show once a month. So, okay, if you've made it this far, thanks for listening to me ramble. I've got to go wrap all of these because now that's my job, is to mail them to the customer. And here's my final tip. I'm going to wrap these pretty. I'm going to wrap them so pretty, and I'm going to include a card, and I'm going to include a gift card, and I'm going to make the packaging so wonderful that when they open, it's like a gift. So that's my last tip. When you are sending out your stuff, make it so that the people are just loving to get it. Okay, guys, that's how we did it. We'll see you in the next video.